At the beginning, we see Akari Watanabe praying at a shrine, and while she is making her wish, Shiori Sakurazaka arrives. But when she is greeted, Akari suddenly leaves. While Shiori also made her wish. In this school, there is a rule that requires a boy and a girl to live together in a house and pretend to be married, which they call marriage practical. We then see our protagonist, Jiro Yakuin, playing video games with his friend Sadaharu Kumo when Akari suddenly arrives and tells them to leave because they are blocking the stairs. As she passes by, Sadaharu comments on Akari's beauty and fragrance, but Jiro says he doesn't like girls like her. Later, the handsome Tenjin Minami arrives, and Akari's mood changes immediately. In class, Shiori Sakurazaka talks to him about starting the marriage practical, and next, we will find out how the marriage practical works, where their house has cameras and sensors to monitor them. However, since they are still students, they have separate rooms that have fingerprint locks. Jiro is thinking about who he would like to be paired with. But he found out that Akari was actually assigned as his partner, and they both didn't want that. While they were talking about their ideal partners, Akari noticed that Shiori was the one Jiro liked, and she remarked that he was easy to read. Meanwhile, Akari's preference was Minami. Later on, their score changed from 0 to -3, which surprised them both. Akari said they needed to improve their relationship to raise their points and reach rank A, because if they made it to rank A or the top 10 each month, they would have the chance to switch and choose new partners. However, if they wanted to be in the top 10, and suddenly Akari became nice to him, which immediately worked because their points changed right away. Due to the shock and not knowing what to do, Jiro first said he would just buy a drink, and here we realize that Akari was only doing everything to be with Minami, whereas when Jiro went to get the drinks he bought, he saw Shiori and Minami together, which led him to discover that the two of them had become partners. Jiro couldn't help but run away upon learning this, and when he returned, he was at a loss as to what to do because his opponent now was the handsome Minami. However, Akari comforted him, saying that they should just focus on earning more points. Later, Jiro's friend arrived and invited him to an event, but Akari told him to kiss her first before leaving because their points were still low. At first, Jiro was taken aback and didn't know what to do, but due to Akari's teasing and Sadaharu's repeated calls, he was forced to do it. Next, Shiori woke Jiro up and said she would kiss him if he didn't get up yet. But it turned out to be just a dream, and it was Akari who woke him up. A week later, while Jiro was at school, he saw Shiori and Minami walking in together, chatting happily. After being spoken to by his teacher, he glanced over and saw Shiori hugging Minami. When he got to the classroom, he thought to himself that the two must have developed feelings for each other. After class, it suddenly started raining, and Jiro didn't bring an umbrella. While chatting with his friends, Akari arrived, saying she was running late because she was going to sing karaoke with Minami. However, Jiro remembered that their teacher was sending them to the faculty office, but Akari told Jiro to go alone first, which slightly made Sadaharu jealous because Akari, who was his partner, was so beautiful. When Jiro arrived at the faculty office, the teacher talked to him about their points not changing as partners, and the need to fix their teamwork in order to graduate. While Akari was enjoying herself with Minami, next, as Jiro waited for the rain to stop, he was thinking about what to do. Suddenly, Shiori arrived. Jiro called her by her last name, Sakurazaka, and they both didn't bring an umbrella. Suddenly, Shiori clung to Jiro, and it turned out that she thought a real insect was drawn on the glass, and she told him that she saw a huge insect that morning. Jiro suddenly realized that the reason Shiori was hugging Minami that morning was because of this, so Jiro called Shiori by her last name again, but Shiori said she didn't like it and preferred to be called by her first name like before. However, before he could call her again, Minami suddenly arrived and picked up Shiori because he knew she didn't bring an umbrella. Jiro told them to go ahead and he'll just wait, and then called Shiori by her last name again. Later, Akari arrived to pick up Jiro, and while they were walking, Akari noticed that Jiro looked sad, and said that don't give up.
やらしい。
Upon arriving home, Akari cooked omuris for Jiro.
待って。ゆっくり動いてね。そこダメ。上手。いっぱい込めたよ。召し上がれ。
And Jiro was delighted by the dish and even offered to return the favor to Akari. At first, Akari jokingly declined, which led to Jiro feeling embarrassed.
おいしい。
But when Sadaharu suddenly called,
助かったわ。
ドキドキしなきゃいけないのよ。
なんなんだよ。なんでこんなに。意味わかんない。
there was a knock on Jiro's door while he was sleeping. When he opened it, he saw Shiori.
ジローくん。寂しいの。ジローくん。一緒
しおり。
にいて。役員？
But it was just another dream. It was actually Akari who was knocking on his door. When he opened it, she asked him to accompany her that night.
今夜は隣にいてよ。
え？
スティーブ、どこなの？スティーブ、大丈夫？
It turned out she wanted to watch a horror movie and couldn't bear to watch it alone. This was advice from her friend to boost their points. However, Jiro said it wouldn't work, so Akari thought they could just wear the couple pajamas she had bought. He reluctantly agreed. Later, Akari told him to turn around. She planned to change clothes there. He had to turn around and thought that Akari seemed to not care about him, so he would change too. But while he was changing, the power suddenly went out, and Akari suddenly hugged him. Jiro was taken aback as he felt the softness of Akari's embrace. And here he noticed that she was just scared.
ライト。
待って。
え？
バカよ、悪い。バカバカ。
And because of the power outage, they couldn't enter their room, so Akari just sent him back to her side. While they were sitting next to each other, Akari asked him to tell something funny, and she even teased Jiro. So, Jiro was forced to come up with a story, but instead of being funny, it turned out to be scary. When he saw that Akari was getting scared, he stopped and apologized. At that point, Akari told him that they were together now, so he should be nice.
でもさ、今ここには頼らせてくれてもいいじゃん。意地悪。
Later on, Akari took out the scented candle she bought and used it. After a while, he called out to Akari.
渡辺。かわいい。
And when he realized what he said, he suddenly felt embarrassed and nervous. Fortunately, she had already fallen asleep and seemed not to have heard him. However, once he fell asleep, we would find out that Akari wasn't really asleep and was just pretending.
バカ。意味わかんない。
The next day, they learned that they were ranked B and almost made it into the top 10, but they were surprised when they saw Shiori and the others are in rank E, and Jiro was wondering what happened and whether Minami and Shiori are not getting along, because even if their scores with Akari are the highest, nothing will happen if the one they want to exchange with has a low score. Next, we see Shiori talking to her friend, where she mentions that she is thinking about Jiro and their marriage practical, and that she is not good at dealing with people she doesn't know. Then we see that Jiro is sick while Akari leaves with her friends. Because of this, Jiro imagines that Shiori is taking care of him. Later, their doorbell rings, and at first, he thinks it's just Akari, but he is surprised to find that it is actually Shiori. Meanwhile, while with her friends, Akari can't help but think about Jiro. Back to Jiro, once inside the room, Shiori says that Akari was the one who sent her there, because she was also worried. She immediately went, which greatly pleased Jiro, and this reminded Shiori that when they were kids, Jiro was the one who took care of her when she got sick, and now it was her turn to take care of Jiro. Shiori then said she would cook a meal for Jiro, which reminded Jiro of what had happened between him and Shiori.
また勘違いしちまうじゃんか。俺はしおりに告白するつもりだった。転校先は私立なんだ。
うん。
しおり、俺。
ねえ、ジローくん。私と友達でいてくれる？
うん、いいよ。あの時急に怖くなって、結果的には良かったんだと思う。
Later, Shiori finished cooking, and Jiro ate the food, but he thought to himself that it would have been better if he had let Shiori feed him instead. Afterwards, they joked about their practical marriage, and Shiori casually mentioned that it would have been better if Jiro had been her husband, which shocked Jiro.
私も 旦那さんだったらよかった。
As Shiori was about to leave, while Jiro was sleeping, she said something.
寝ちゃった。ジローくん、やっと名前で呼んでくれたね。ぼーっとしちゃった。ジローくん、私。
And meanwhile, Akari couldn't help but think of Jiro. Back to Shiori, we found out that she had restrained herself from kissing Jiro, and recalled their similar past experiences.
何も変わんないよ。
よかった。クリスマスの駅前のイルミネーションとか、もし、ジローくん。
悪い。用事思い出したから、もう行くわ。
またね。もう一度頑張ったら聞いてくれるかな。
The next day, while eating, Akari asked Jiro about what men usually like in women. He replied that men like it when women cook for them, and Akari liked the idea, so she tried it out. After cooking, she let Jiro taste it, and he enjoyed it. However, Jiro said he preferred food that's a bit sweeter. But Akari said that Minami was mature enough and probably wouldn't like sweet food. When they got to school, Sadaharu felt envious of Jiro and talked to him about the two of them hanging out together. When Akari arrived, she asked Jiro if the food she had prepared was ready to be served to Minami, and Jiro said it was delicious but also mentioned that he still preferred sweet dishes. Akari replied that Minami wouldn't like sweet food. The next morning, Akari started cooking for Minami, and said she would deliver it to Minami's workplace. Before leaving, she let Jiro taste it first. Akari had already dressed up and prepared herself, but just as she was about to leave, Shiori suddenly arrived to give her a freshly baked apple pie and mentioned that she had made too much because Minami had requested it, as she apparently loves sweet things. When Akari heard this, she felt sad because it turned out that everything she had cooked didn't suit Minami's taste. After Shiori left, only Jiro ate the dishes Akari had prepared, and while Akari was feeling down, Jiro noticed and tried to cheer her up by saying she could still find out what Minami likes to eat. However, Akari remained sad and seemed to have lost her confidence. Jiro continued to try to lift her spirits, telling her she was beautiful and sexy, and that many people liked her, especially her body. While Jiro was saying all this, Akari suddenly confronted him and asked if he was also thinking like that. And she said that if he was thinking the same, he should do it to her.
こういうこと。ね、役員。ね、何回？どういう時に考えたの？いいよ。叶えてあげる。
マジだったんだ。こんなあっさり卒業できちゃっていいの？
But Jiro stopped him and said to do it only to the person he loves, who is Minami, and for him, it's Shiori. Because of this, Akari said she no longer wanted to continue being partners and to end it.
もうやめよっか、夫婦。
After this, they avoided each other, and in the days that followed, their points gradually decreased until the day of the monthly evaluation came again. Here, we see that Shiori made it into the top 10, but Jiro and Akari are now ranked E, and it seems that Shiori looks sad, seemingly hoping to switch partners as well. Next, Sadaharu asked Jiro what happened and why their score suddenly dropped, but Jiro didn't want to talk about it. Later, Shiori approached him and asked if they could talk.
これからちょっとだけ二人で話す時間あるかな？
おお。
Here, Shiori asked him what happened between them, and Jiro simply replied that they had a misunderstanding. Shiori then suggested they discuss it since they were living together, and she knew Akari would understand him because she knew Jiro is a good person because he has known him since they were children. When he got home, Jiro immediately tried to talk to Akari, who let him into her room. There, Jiro apologized for what happened between them, and Akari said that Jiro hadn't done anything wrong. However, Jiro felt that it was his mistake. While feeling shy, Akari reassured him that everything was fine and that they should just forget about it. Jiro clarified that he didn't reject Akari that day because he didn't want to, but because he preferred to treat her well and kindly. Now, he wanted to fix everything and return to how things were between them.
渡辺、もう一回俺と夫婦になってほしいです。
Akari laughed at Jiro's seriousness, which made him feel embarrassed. Akari then said that they really needed to improve their relationship because they needed it to graduate.
私ね、この夫婦生活割と楽しんでるかも。ジローのこと結構好きだよ。ねえ、ジローは？
なんで急に名前なんか好きって どういう、なんだよ、俺は。
But it turned out that she was just teasing him. After their conversation, she stepped out onto the balcony. Akari was thinking about what was said to Jiro.
ジローのこと結構好きだよ。言っちゃった。
The next day, we see Akari talking to her friends about their partners, while Jiro is just staring at Shiori and Akari. Meanwhile, we can see that Minami is truly talented and admired by the girls, and Jiro thinks he really has no chance against him. Next, they mention the rumor that Minami has no plans to switch partners, which saddens Jiro and Akari. While walking, Shiori approaches Jiro and asks if he's okay, while Jiro thinks about how he still wants to be Shiori's partner. He then asks Shiori if she plans to switch partners. Meanwhile, while Akari is organizing things, Minami arrives, surprising Akari and almost causing her to drop her things. Luckily, Minami saves her, and here Akari asks him if he plans to switch partners, to which he replies that he has no plans as long as things are fine. Between him and his partner, Akari felt sad and cried, but pretended that there's dust in her eyes, when Sadaharu secretly saw them together. Going back to Jiro, Shiori answered his question, saying that if they could reach a rank, maybe they could, but she didn't finish what she wanted to say and wanted to leave.
でももし、ジローくんが A ランクに、私、なんてね。
However, Jiro stopped her, saying he would make sure they reached a rank, and if that happened, he wanted them both to.
俺 A ランク行くよ。しおりも A ランクだったら、俺と。
But he couldn't finish because Sadaharu suddenly arrived, saying he had seen something. Jiro apologized for his friend's interruption, and before Sadaharu could say what he saw, Minami and Akari arrived, leading to a brief silence before Shiori and Minami left. When they got to the classroom, Sadaharu told Jiro what he had seen, revealing that he had seen Minami and Akari kissing. After learning this, it seemed that Jiro didn't know how to react. When they returned home, Jiro approached Akari and said he was happy for her and Minami. Akari asked him why, and he said that it seemed the two had grown closer and that he had heard they kissed. Akari chuckled a bit at the misunderstanding and mentioned that Minami had only helped her when she said she was squinting. The truth was, she felt sad now because she found out that Minami had no intention of changing partners. She remarked on how quickly Jiro believed what he heard. At this, Jiro felt a bit embarrassed and said he believed it right away because he knew she was doing everything for Minami. However, he noticed that
バカじゃん。ウケる。
渡辺。
話、バカ、あっち向いて。
あっち向いた。
After Akari took a shower, she said she would wear Jiro's clothes first. When she sat next to him, he told her not to wear like that all the time, and Akari teased him even more. Then, Akari mentioned how quickly Jiro believed she had kissed someone, because in reality,
別にそういうわけ。
ジローだけだよ。あの時が初めてだから。
And the next day, Jiro was surprised to find her in the classroom when he arrived. Shiori arrived early, and Jiro asked why she was there. Shiori explained that her friend, who was supposed to help Jiro clean, couldn't make it, so she stepped in. It turned out they had planned this to bring Shiori and Jiro closer together, and her friend even advised her to use this opportunity to kiss Jiro. Meanwhile, Akari and her friends were discussing the news that many couples had officially become partners. Back to Jiro and Shiori, as they were almost done tidying up, they happened to be seen by Akari, who decided to leave, and as for Jiro.
ジローくん、目を閉じて。
え？これ夢？どういうこと？
He noticed a bit of dirt left behind, which made him feel embarrassed, thinking it was his chance. However, the truth was that Shiori had intended to kiss him, but her nerves got the better of her, and she couldn't go through with it. That evening, Jiro reflected on how nothing had really happened, even though he had spent time alone with Shiori, and he remembered the past. Later on, Akari arrived, and asked Jiro what he was thinking, and later she expressed her desire for him to call her by her first name, Akari. Jiro, however, rejected this idea, but Akari pointed out that he calls Shiori by her first name, yet he couldn't do the same for her, his partner. Akari mentioned that she liked her name, and when she felt sad, she wanted Jiro to call her by her first name. While explaining, Jiro suddenly called her Akari, which she liked.
すみません、渡辺さん。
ダメ。もう一回。てか私はジローって呼んでんのに好きみたいじゃん。やだ。
好き？
They both felt a bit awkward after Akari mentioned that she had feelings for Jiro, and then she abruptly went into her room. Jiro thought that Akari was just joking with him because she seemed to have feelings for Minami. Meanwhile, Akari was confused about her feelings.
もうやだ。わかんない。
The next day in class, their teacher informed them about an upcoming test, which would contribute to their scores as partners. Meanwhile, Akari was not thinking about this and planning to hang out with friends. Jiro talked to Akari about it and found out that she wasn't doing well in her subjects. So, Jiro told Akari that they needed to study and review to pass. At first, Akari was reluctant because she had already agreed to go out with her friends, but she was compelled to listen when Jiro said they needed to do this to switch partners.
最悪。必死すぎじゃん。桜坂さんが絡んでる。
Next, we see Shirori studying with her friend, and she mentioned her relationship with Jiro, which made her blush and feel shy. At Jiro's house, we see that Akari no longer wants to study and is feeling tired. Here, Jiro realizes that Akari actually understands the subjects easily but is just too lazy to study. Later on, Akari tries to flirt with Jiro to stop the review, but Jiro notices and tells her to cut it out.
ねえジロー、勉強よりジローのしたいこと一緒にしよう。何しよっか。
However, he also notices that some of Akari's answers are correct and encourages her to keep going, which makes her happy. Akari continued what she was doing until she finished reviewing, and she thanked Jiro for helping her. She then asked Jiro if he felt his heart race around her, but Jiro replied that he didn't. This irritated Akari, and she said that even though Jiro was better than her in studying, she wanted to make it up to him and make his heart race. Jiro said that there was no need to do that, but Akari continued to tease him while Jiro tried to hold himself back.
じゃあさ、これはドキドキした？出たしかと。
待て！
ほれほれ、見ていいぞ。
やべえ、これいつも負けてんじゃねえぞ俺！
なんでよ。ねえ、ジローの心臓
してるよ。
ちょっと何マジな顔してんの。ジロー、待ってジロー、話！
In the end, Akari laughed at Jiro for what happened, while Jiro felt embarrassed. He thought about it and thanked Akari for the experience because he almost couldn't control himself. Jiro then asked Akari why she seemed to be acting differently. Akari responded to this by saying that Shirori is always on his mind and is always in a hurry to be with her. But Jiro replied that he is doing this also for Akari so that she can be with Minami right away. At this point, Akari just thought to herself that
絶対学校で言うなよ。
このまま A ランクになってジローも私もジローには一生言うことはなくてそれぞれ違う匂いになって今は同じ洗剤の香りがする服もそれが正解だよね。これはただの勉強だから。
The next morning, Jiro suddenly noticed that Akari calls him by his last name, and he wonders why. When they arrive at school, his friends saw him searching the internet for possible reasons. While walking, they spot Shiori's friend Mei talking to a girl, and they find out that this girl has a crush on Mei. Mei is pleased to learn this but says she can find someone better suited for her. The girl feels sad and expresses that she wants to be called by her first name. Watching this, Jiro feels as if they have been defeated by a girl. Next, we see Jiro pondering whether he has done something wrong and why Akari calls him by his last name. When he gets home, he thinks that maybe it's because he doesn't call Akari by her first name, even though she had previously said she wanted him to call her by it. After taking a shower, he tries to call Akari by her first name. And even attempts to tease her.
あかり。
何ジロー。
え？あれ、もしかしてこれ、あかり。
もう言わないなら言うな。
にやける。
今顔見ちゃダメ。一応夫婦なんだからさ。 これからもあかりがいい。好き。
Next, Mei saw that Jiro entered the top 10, and immediately talked to Shirori about this and said that Shirori should find a way to get Jiro's attention because Akari might take him away. She said she would help Shirori get closer to Jiro. Suddenly, Shirori got hit by a ball. Next, Mei talked to Jiro, asking him to go to the nurse's office to see Shirori. At first, Jiro was shy because he wasn't her partner, but Mei insisted and told him to check on Shirori. Jiro agreed and went. While in the nurse's office, Mei told Shirori that she called Jiro over. When Shirori found out, she quickly tidied herself up. Later, Jiro arrived, greeted Shirori, and while they were talking, Shirori mentioned that it seemed like Jiro and Akari were getting along better now since they made it to the top 10. Shirori expressed that she also wanted to experience being Jiro's wife. Shirori said that she had been shy around boys for a long time and hadn't matured yet. Jiro then asked her if this meant that her relationship with Minami wasn't progressing, and if Minami had already kissed her. However, Shirori replied that it wasn't the case and that she would only do it with the person she loved, saying that she didn't know how to kiss and might not be liked by the boy. Nevertheless, Jiro stated that kissing was important, and if it were him, he would be happy regardless of whether she knew how to kiss or not. When Jiro said this, Shirori asked if Jiro could teach her how to kiss.
一緒にキス。
But at first, Shirori suddenly felt shy and mentioned that Jiro already had a partner. However, Jiro asked her why, and Shirori replied that she only thought of Jiro in this regard, and she wanted to do it. Just as the two were about to kiss, Shirori thought it wasn't right and shouldn't be continued since they weren't partners. Suddenly, someone entered, and Jiro stumbled. It turned out to be one of Akari's friends who intended to sleep in the nurse's office. However, upon seeing two students on a bed, the friend assumed they were doing something else and quickly left. Then, the kiss between the two finally happened, but after that, the two suddenly felt shy and Jiro quickly left. Next, we'll see Akari, who has been waiting for a reply from Jiro, and suddenly Akari's friend arrives and says she saw some students doing something suspicious in the nurse's office. At the same time, Jiro responds to Akari, saying he went to see Shirori in the nurse's office, which makes Akari think that the students their friend was referring to might be Jiro. When Jiro gets home, he sees the chocolate Akari brought and wonder why it hasn't been eaten yet. Meanwhile, Akari is sitting alone in a cafe, looking sad while thinking about Jiro and Shirori. When Akari gets home, she can't help but wonder if something really did happen between Jiro and Shirori. But when she entered, she saw Jiro sleeping on the sofa, and she couldn't understand why Jiro was sleeping there. That was when she saw that Jiro had eaten the chocolate she had brought, and it seemed like Jiro was waiting for her. It turned out that the chocolate contained alcohol, which is why Jiro fell asleep. Next, Akari changed into loungewear and lay down beside Jiro. When Jiro woke up, he was startled to find Akari beside him, almost naked. Jiro was bewildered and asked Akari what had happened and why Akari was almost undressed. Akari teased him, saying that something had happened between them the previous night. Jiro was shocked, having no memory of what had transpired, and asked Akari if something really did happen and if he was no longer a virgin. Akari then realized that nothing had actually occurred between Shirori and Jiro, because Jiro said that he was still a virgin. While Jiro was speaking, Akari calmly said that he was just joking, which enraged Jiro because Akari always played tricks on him. He was disappointed because he was still a virgin,